Billy Hawthorne had always been proud of his place on New Texas. At 15, he was already showing the kind of steady resolve that marked the best of the frontier folk. The red dust of the colony world clung to his boots as he walked the familiar path home from Jefferson High, his girlfriend Becca Martinez at his side, her dark hair catching the amber light of the setting binary suns. "I be meaning to show you something," Billy said, kicking a loose stone down the dusty road. "I've got these too. Well, I'm not exactly sure what they are, but they're the most interesting creatures I've ever seen. About a foot tall, 4 limbs each, covered in this soft, silvery fur that changes color depending on the light." Becca smiled, though her attention was only half on Billy's words. She was more interested in the way his eyes lit up when he talked about things he cared about, the way his voice took on that particular warmth. "They sound fascinating. How long have you had them?" "About 3 months now. Found them near the old mining shaft on the north side of town. They were just lost, I guess. Scared. Something about them seemed so intelligent, you know, like they understood more than they let on." Billy paused, running a hand through his sandy hair. "Mom thinks I'm crazy, spending so much time with them, but Dad says every boy needs something to care for." The Hawthorne homestead came into view, a modest prefab structure with solar collectors gleaming on the roof and a small fusion generator humming quietly in the yard. Like most homes on New Texas, it was built for function over form, designed to withstand the occasional dust storms and the bitter cold of the long winter nights when both suns dipped below the horizon. "Let me check if they're awake," Billy said as they reached the front porch. "I built them a little shelter in the back room where they can hide when they want privacy. Sometimes they spend hours in there, making these soft chittering sounds to each other." Becca settled onto the porch swing, content to wait and watch the endless dance of spacecraft coming and going from the colonial spaceport 5 miles distant. New Texas was a hub world, a stopping point for traders, miners, and colonists heading deeper into the frontier territories. She'd grown up with the sight of ships streaking across the purple-orange sky, their fusion drives painting brief auroras against the stars. A heavy freight hauler was descending now, its massive bulk blotting out a section of the early evening sky. Becca watched it with idle curiosity, noting the unfamiliar configuration of its engine pods. Not a standard colonial transport, something from the inner systems, maybe even old Earth itself. She was still watching the ship when Billy emerged from the house. The change in him was so dramatic that for a moment Becca didn't recognize the boy she'd been walking with just minutes before. The easy smile was gone, replaced by an expression of grim determination that belonged on the face of a much older man. His shoulders were set differently, his posture alert and ready, and cradled in his arms was his father's old military-issue plasma rifle, the weapon's power cell humming with barely contained energy. "Billy." Becca's voice came out as barely a whisper. "They're not pets," he said, his voice flat and controlled. "Turns out they can talk. Have been able to all along. I never knew to listen properly." He checked the rifle's charge indicator, his movement precise and economical. "They're called Corellians. They're refugees. Becca, refugee from something terrible that happened in the vegan systems. And that ship that just landed, it's carrying a hunter." Becca felt a chill run down her spine that had nothing to do with a desert evening. Everyone on the frontier knew stories about the hunters, bioengineered killing machines created by the Terran military during the Secession Wars, then abandoned when the peace accords were signed. Most people assumed they were just propaganda, horror stories designed to keep the outer colonies in line. A hunter? Billy, are you sure? Zek and Nim, my friends, they've been running from it for 6 months. It tracked them across 4 systems before they managed to lose it in the asteroid fields around Proxima Station. Billy's jaw tightened. They thought they were safe here, thought it would give up the chase. How do they know it's here now? Billy touched a small device clipped to his collar, something that definitely hadn't been there when they'd walked home from school. Proximity sensor. Corallian tech. It's been quiet for weeks, but it started screaming about 10 minutes ago. He looked out toward the spaceport, his eyes scanning the horizon with the focused intensity of a born hunter. The hunter's already on the ground, moving fast. It'll be here within the hour. Becca stood up from the swing, her mind racing. She'd grown up on New Texas, where every child learned to shoot before they learned to drive, where the harsh realities of frontier life strip away childhood innocence early. She understood what Billy was telling her, and more importantly, she understood what it meant. What does it look like? This hunter. 7 feet tall, 4 arms, 2 legs, skin like polished chitin, fast as lightning, tough as starship armor, and programmed to kill anything that gets between it and its target. Billy glanced toward the house. Zek described the last time they saw one in action. It went through a squad of colonial marines like they were made of paper. And you're planning to stop it with that rifle. For the first time since he'd come back outside, Billy's expression wavered. For just a moment, Becca could see the 15-year-old boy beneath the grim facade. I'm going to try. They are under my protection now. That has to mean something. The weight of his words settled over them both. Protection wasn't just a word on New Texas. It was a sacred obligation, part of the unwritten code that held the frontier communities together. When someone placed themselves under your protection, you defended them with everything you had, even if it meant your life. What can I do? Becca asked. Billy looked at her sharply, and she saw something flicker in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or relief that he wouldn't be facing this alone. Take Zek and Nim and get them as far from here as possible. There's an old mining complex about 20 kilometers north. Plenty of places to hide. No. Becca's voice was firm. If this thing is as smart as you say, it'll just track them down eventually. And besides, she gestured toward the approaching darkness. What if it doesn't come through the front? What if it circles around, tries to get in from the back or the sides? Billy paused, considering. The tactical situation was more complex than he'd initially thought. The homestead sat in a small valley with approaches from 3 directions, and a hunter would be smart enough to use the terrain to its advantage. You're right, he admitted. And if it's carrying tracking equipment, running won't help anyway. He was quiet for a moment, thinking through their options. Can you handle a weapon? Becca gave him a look that was equal parts amusement and exasperation. Billy Hawthorne, what planet do you think I grew up on? I've been shooting since I was 8 years old. Right. Sorry. A ghost of his old smile flickered across his face. Dad's got a gun safe in the study. Help yourself to whatever you can handle. If this thing gets past me—" "It won't," Becca said firmly. "But if it does, I'll be ready." She headed into the house, leaving Billy alone on the porch with his thoughts and his rifle. The desert evening was settling around the homestead now, painting the landscape in shades of purple and gold. In the distance, the lights of the spaceport twinkled like fallen stars. Inside the house, Becca found the gun safe easily enough, a massive military-grade unit that took up half the wall of Mr. Hawthorne's study. It was keyed to Billy's biometrics, a sign of the trust his parents placed in their son's judgment. The weapon selection was impressive: pulse rifles, beam weapons, traditional projectile firearms, and several things Becca couldn't immediately identify. She selected a compact pulse carbine and a sidearm, checking the charge levels and familiarizing herself with the controls. The weapons were well maintained, their surfaces showing the kind of careful attention that marked a professional soldier's gear. Billy's father had served in the Colonial Defense Force before settling on New Texas, and it showed. As she checked her equipment, Becca became aware of soft sounds coming from a back room, the gentle chittering that Billy had mentioned, but with an undertone of distress that made her heart ache. She made her way to the doorway and peered inside. The two Karelians were huddled together in a nest of soft blankets, their silvery fur now a deep, worried blue. They were exactly as Billy had described them, about a foot tall, with 4 delicate limbs and large, expressive eyes that seemed far too intelligent for their size. One of them looked up at her approach and spoke in a voice like wind chimes. "You are the female Billy speaks of. Becca." The casual use of her name startled her, but she managed to keep her composure. "You must be Zek and Nim. Billy told me about the hunter." The second Corallian, Nim, she thought, made a sound that might have been a sigh. "We brought death to this place. We should have kept running." "No," Becca said firmly. "You did the right thing. Billy's a good person, and this is a good place. If something evil is hunting you, then this is where you should make your stand." "The hunter is not evil," Zek corrected gently. "It is simply what it was made to be. But it will not stop, and it will not show mercy. Billy is brave, but he is very young." "Is not as young as he looks," Becca replied, thinking of the transformation she'd witnessed on the porch. "And is not alone." She left them then, returning to the main room where Billy was making final preparations. He'd moved furniture to create better sight lines and fields of fire, positioning himself where he could cover the most likely approaches to the house. His movements were efficient and purposeful, the actions of someone who'd thought through the tactical situation carefully. "How long?" Becca asked, taking up a position near the side window. Billy consulted the proximity sensor. 20 minutes, maybe less. It's moving faster than I expected." He glanced over at her, and she saw a flicker of the boy she knew. "Becca, you don't have to do this. You could still take them and run. I won't think less of you." "I know you wouldn't," she replied, "but I'm staying anyway. We're in this together now." They settled into position and waited. The house grew quiet except for the soft hum of the life support systems and the distant murmur of voices from a back room. Outside, the desert night was settling in, bringing with it the crystalline clarity that made the frontier world so beautiful and so deadly. The proximity sensor began beeping faster. "It's close," Billy whispered, his finger moving to the rifle's trigger guard. "Very close." A shadow detached itself from the darkness beyond the porch, tall, angular, moving with a fluid grace that was both beautiful and terrifying. The hunter was exactly as Billy had described. 7 feet of polished chitin and predatory efficiency, its forearms ending in hands that could crush bone or delicately manipulate the most sensitive electronics. It stopped at the edge of the porch light, its multifaceted eyes reflecting the illumination like black diamonds. When it spoke, its voice was a perfect synthesis of human speech patterns, utterly without emotion. "Human juvenile, I am here to retrieve 2 Class 7 Corallian fugitives. Surrender them now and you will not be harmed." Billy stepped into view, his rifle trained on the hunter's center mass. "They are under my protection. You're not welcome here." The hunter cocked its head slightly, processing this information. "You are aware that interference with a sanctioned retrieval operation is a capital offense under colonial law." New, Texas handles its own law," Billy replied steadily, "and we don't recognize the authority of whoever sent you." "Irrelevant. Stand aside." The hunter's upper arms moved with lightning speed, bringing up a weapon that crackled with contained energy. But Billy was already moving, his fingers squeezing the trigger as he dove for cover behind an overturned table. The plasma bolt caught the hunter's center mass, sending it staggering backward. Its return shot scorched the air where Billy had been standing, leaving a smoking crater in the wall behind him. The hunter recovered quickly, advancing toward the house with measured steps. Billy fired again, then again, his shots precise and controlled. The hunter's armor absorbed most of the damage, but hairline cracks were beginning to appear in the chitin plates. It raised its weapon for another shot, and Becca's pulse carbine opened up from the side window, catching it in a crossfire. The hunter spun toward this new threat, its movements fluid despite the damage it had sustained. Its weapon swiveled toward Becca's position. Billy used a distraction to change position, flanking the hunter from the other side. His next shot punched through a weakened section of armor, drawing a spray of dark fluid that might have been blood. The hunter staggered but kept fighting, its programming driving it forward despite mounting damage. The battle raged for what felt like hours, but couldn't have been more than minutes. The hunter was fast, incredibly fast, but it was facing 2 opponents from different directions, and the accumulated damage was beginning to tell. Billy's shots were finding their mark more often now, and Becca's covering fire kept it from focusing on either of them for long. Finally, inevitably, the hunter's armor failed. Billy's plasma bolt punched clean through its chest, severing whatever passed for its spine. It toppled backward, hitting the porch with a sound like breaking glass. They waited, weapons trained on the fallen creature, but it didn't move again. The proximity sensor had fallen silent. Billy slowly lowered his rifle, his hands shaking with adrenaline and reaction. Is it dead?" "I think so." Becca kept her weapon ready as she approached the hunter's body. "Yeah, dead as it gets." Billy sank down onto the porch steps, suddenly looking every one of his 15 years. "I can't believe we actually did it." "You did good, Billy." Becca sat down beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. "You did real good." He looked over at her, and she saw something new in his eyes. Not just the boy she'd known, but the man he was becoming. "So did you? I couldn't have done this alone." "You wouldn't have had to. That's not how things work out here." They were interrupted by the soft sound of footsteps on the porch. Zek and Nim had emerged from the house, their fur now a warm golden color that seemed to glow in the dim light. They approached the hunter's body cautiously, as if afraid it might spring back to life. "It is truly dead?" Zek asked. Billy nodded. "Yeah, it's over." Nim made a sound that might have been relief or sorrow. "We are free. Then, for the first time in 6 months, we are truly free. What will you do now?" Becca asked. The two Karelians looked at each other, some complex communication passing between them. Finally, Zek turned back to the humans. "We would like to stay, if that is acceptable. This world is beautiful, and we have found friendship here. Perhaps we might even find a way to be useful to your people." Billy's face lit up with genuine joy. "Of course you can stay. You're not refugees anymore. You're citizens of New Texas. That means something here." "Thank you," Nim said simply, "for everything." As the desert night settled around them, the four unlikely companions sat on the porch of the Hawthorne homestead, looking up at the stars that blazed overhead like scattered diamonds. The frontier was a dangerous place, full of unknowns and unexpected challenges. But it was also a place where friendship could bloom across the vast differences of species and circumstance, where a 15-year-old boy could stand against the darkness and win. Billy reached over and took Becca's hand, squeezing it gently. She squeezed back, and in that simple gesture was a promise of shared adventures yet to come. On New Texas, under the light of binary suns and scattered stars, anything was possible. The hunter was dead, but more importantly, they were all alive and they were free. And sometimes, on the frontier, that was enough.